Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Andrew. You remember Andrew. He is the guy that test drove the Model Y and ordered one 5 days later. Andrew, are you still liking your Model Y?
Of course.
All right, so let's shut the door. I want to get the lowdown. You've had your car now for 6 months.
Correct.
All right, well, let's go talk about that for a minute. So what do you have to report? You've had your Texas Model Y now 6 months.
Yeah, so I got it in August of last year. So I think it's been right at 6 months. I've got maybe right around 11,000 miles on it. So part of my job is to and from the Charlotte airport. So that's about 165 round trip miles. So very easy trip to make with a single charge. So that's, of course, I get the government mileage reimbursement,
right.
And that only, so that's just for home charging purposes. And then I also do quite a bit of travel across the Southeast, and most of my travel is around rural parts of the country. So one of the things that I've been thoroughly impressed is probably the first road trip that I did was almost 1,400 miles in about 2.5 days. And that was all across rural Georgia. Probably the only real change that I made from doing it in an ICE car would be that I, in the morning, programmed every single stop into the car and just allowed the car to manage the trip.
And it told you when you needed to charge or where to go relative to your trip.
I think it took the range anxiety away. Just allowing the car to work through the software of when it felt like it needed to charge and how long and all that kind of stuff. The only little tweak I might have done a little bit was maybe instead of when it was saying to stay for 15 minutes, I might have stayed 17, 18 minutes to add a little bit extra for, the kind of emotional security more than anything else.
Yeah, right. That's good. So you've had your car, and what does your wife think of the car?
So I think the fun part was the hardest thing that she had to deal with at first was just walking away from the car and knowing that it would lock itself and that it would be it would be in good hands. You didn't need to do anything actively. So it was quite, but then I found myself the other night walking away from the car and forgetting I was driving a friend's ICE car and walking away and forgetting to lock it.
Was it still running though?
It was still running when I pulled up to the gas station and forgot to turn it off. Yes, for sure.
That's a common problem when you start driving your Tesla. You forget to do that. How about when you got in it, you had to actually start it, didn't you?
Yeah, you forget that you can't just get in and go. Yeah, put it in drive. So it can be really, it's funny the differences after you've had the car and it's the only thing you've driven for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, and before that you drove a lot of miles in your ICE car, right?
Correct. Yeah, I would average 20 to 25,000 miles a year.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're on track with the Tesla.
Yeah.
So do you think being have to charge at superchargers and whatever, how about the cost of doing that? How does that compare?
Yeah, so the way I tend to think about it is that it is probably a third of the cost of what, let's say a 25 mile a gallon car would be.
Right.
That's what my general calculations have been. I've had really good experience with the superchargers. They tend to be in places where I can stop and get a bite to eat. I can run into the grocery store and use the bathroom or buy a couple of bottles of water. Or I'm at a hotel where I can go in and use the bathroom or something like that. So I've found that they've been really conveniently located. They're not just kind of out in the middle of nowhere where you don't have a service that you can kill some time with.
So what do you think of the Tesla charging network?
It's hyper simplistic. Probably the hardest thing is backing up close enough to the charger to realize that you only have 3 feet or so of cable to deal with.
Right.
I can see why Tesla did that, because if you had longer lengths, they'd be all over the ground and things like that. I can certainly see why Tesla did that, but I mean, by far that's the hardest thing, is making sure that you back in correctly and you get close enough to the charger.
Right. You getting backing your car in down pat now?
Yeah, it's hard not to with 3 camera views.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, keep those lines where you want to go and just go back.
Yeah, for sure.
Good deal. Well, now that you've had your Austin Model Y now for 6 months, what is the best thing about that car?
It is just, I call it stupid fun to drive. I mean, to me, that is the, just every day that I get into it and drive it, I have a good time.
Do you have a smile when you do that?
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah, it's easy when you land at the airport after a long road trip to get into the car and have a fun drive home.
Good. So, and then what do you dislike most about your Tesla?
I've struggled to kind of find a dislike. I mean, the only thing maybe I would ask for is maybe 50, 75 more miles of range. Mm-hmm. I think would be I'm an unusual user, right? So, but probably another 50 to 75 miles of range.
Yeah.
So if I were up around the 400 mark, I think I'd be a little bit more comfortable in my kind of road trips, but I think I can't think of anything else about it.
Good. 2 more questions.
Sure.
Range anxiety.
Yeah.
You had range anxiety, and do you still have range anxiety?
Yeah, so that first 1,400 mile road trip was some really, like the first day was very significant range anxiety. I think at least in the Southeast, the availability of chargers, the fact that pretty much every kind of 40 or 50 miles on the freeway, you're going to find a supercharger. It's as long as you're using the navigation app in the car, the range anxiety is not a thing.
Cool. And last question, Autopilot. Do you use it?
I do use it. So I only have the kind of very basic. I don't have any of the kind of added autopilot features or self-driving features. I use the automated cruise control by far the most, especially in stop and go traffic where it is exceptional. I'm still getting used to being comfortable of like just allowing the car to drive itself. But I think the counter to that is that I actually really like driving the car.
Yeah.
And so that's the hard part I struggle with is I don't really want it to drive itself. I'd rather drive it.
That's what Richard, my buddy, says. He says, I don't use that. I always like to drive it. Well, that's true. I get it. Hey, Andrew, thank you. And I'm glad we got your tires rotated, and you know where all the stuff is. So if you need to come over and rotate them, you know how to do it.
Fantastic.
Good. Thanks for coming over, and thanks for the update here with your car.
You got it.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.